Okay, so yeah, after Ladislav Reimer gave a good overview of our work or connected work with the Morpho, I want to show a few more details on the integration part of the FBG sensors and also the implementation into the RTM process, and also the data analysis for the resin flow monitoring. So about the content. Yes, first a short overview about the Morpho project. Then I would like to continue with the sensor technology and the FBG sensor network. And following this, I would like to give an insight into the integration and also the implementation of the fiber optics into the RTM process. And finally, as mentioned, I would like to introduce the FBG-based RTM monitoring, what Ladislav Reimer also showed. Okay, about the Morpho project, I think it's not new, but a short slide about this is Morpho is an industrial research project which aims to develop this smart aeronautical part, in this case an engine blade, and to give them cognitive capabilities using sensors to optimize their manufacturing and their life cycle management. And the research is being realized in the Morpho project with this FOD panels, which is pictured on this image. And this has the core body of this 3D woven CFRP part and metal leading edge protection. And some more details on this FOD panels will be shown later on this presentation, where we integrate this sensor technology. About the sensor technology, as Mr. Reimer already presented, FBG are nothing more and nothing less than microstructures in glass fibers, if you would say so. And this microstructures are it's possible to use these microstructures to measure strain or temperature, because they are if you stretch or compress this part of the optic fibers, the wavelength which is reflected in this microstructure is shifted. And if you shift this wavelength using strain, it's possible to measure it. And so you have the sensor just having a glass fiber. And also the same as for the temperature measurement, the thermal optical effects and the thermal expansion of this glass fiber can be used for measuring temperature. And so the main features of the FBG sensor are the compact size, the high sensitivity, and the multiplexing capability. And some more details about the FBG sensor and signal on the slide. There's an image of a section of this preform material we used in the Morpho project, where an FBG array is integrated containing 8 FBGs. And yes, as you see here, and there's also the typical signal response of this sensor array on this diagram. And next to a reference FBG grating wavelength, you see all 8 wavelengths, selectively reflected wavelengths of each sensor. And the main aspect of this signal response is, as Ladislav Reimer already presented, is a wavelength shift, which is the shift in the wavelength, and also the intensity shift, if you want to have some additional information depending on the environment the sensor is used. And to the sensor network, in Morpho project, the sensor network has to fulfill 2 main requirements. It should be usable for the RTM monitoring, for detecting the resin, and also for the SHM of the manufactured part, for example, performing strain or temperature measurements. And our approach was, in general, a symmetrically longitudinal FBG sensor arrangement for this two requirements, but mainly for the RTM monitoring, to have this array of sensors in a line to detect the resin flow. And as Mr. Reimer already explained, the linking to the sensor locations to the dielectric sensors in the RTM mold was another feature in the Morpho project, where the signal data for this optical sensors and the electrical sensors are comparable at the same position in the mold. We had some additional transverse sensor integrated in, for example, this array for additional strain measurement in this transverse direction. And we adapted the sensor network based on simulation results. For example, having some additional sensors on the outer edge areas where some peaks of stresses occurs during impacts. Okay, so now to the integration of the FBG sensors. In the Morpho project, there were two different approaches of the integration these sensors into the component. The first one is the automatic sensor integration within the weaving process of the preform. So during the fabrication of the preform, there were two sensor arrays integrated automatically while the weaving process. As you see this overview of the all integrated sensors, you see this automatic integrated sensors in this dotted lines, which were used there. And also the second approach for integrating was the manual sensor integration, by hand, using steel capillaries. And on the next slide, I want to show some details about the manual optical fiber integration into the preform. And as mentioned, it was performed by the insertion of a steel capillary as an aid for integrating the fibers. And this video shows the procedure of embedded into the outer surface area of the preform. And there you can see the manual way to insert the steel capillary. And after this steel capillary was embedded, the glass fiber, the optical fibers, was inserted into the steel capillary, and then the capillary was pulled out again to the back side, and so the glass fiber takes its place in the preform. So this was the way we performed the integration. In the end, we had different approaches, which wasn't as feasible for this industrial kind of insertion. But as you remember this overview of the FOD panel, there was a lot of sensor arrays to be integrated in one FOD panel, so we had a lot of work to do with one single FOD panel, with integrating these fibers in this way. But one main aspect of our research was the implementation of this sensor technique into the RTM process, because the RTM process is this closed mold process for composite manufacturing, and it has some additional aspects we have to deal with. And during the project, several implementations or testings, different solutions were carried out for these fiber optic connections. And I want to show 4 of these tested solutions on the slide. So the first one is the fiber optic feed-through connection. This serves should serve for two aspects for the RTM monitoring. So read out the FBGs during the RTM process and also the SHM of the part afterwards. Here's the scheme of the feed-through solution. The second was the embedded connector. The third was embedded ferrules, which is kind of the inner part of the connector. And these connectors or ferrules were cast into silicon to protect it during the RTM process and embedded in the edge areas of the preform. And the fourth solution was the embedding of the beer fiber in a glass vial, which is also cast in silicon in a rubber protective to protect it during the RTM process. And on the next slide, I want to show some more details about the feed-through solution, which, again, the approach was to enable the connection of the optical fibers during the RTM process. So, and it was realized as followed. We had two, I switch on my laser pointer. We have two through holes in the RTM mold where this feed-through solutions is positioned. And we used a steel tube where the optical fibers are fed through and inner sealed with a vacuum-proofed sealing. And next to this inner sealing, we had this outer sealing of this steel tube using this process fitting with the inner vacuum sealing by tightening with this process fitting. And so we have the solution of embed the fibers into or lead out the fibers in the steel tube and seal it inner the steel tube and outer the steel tube at the mold. And the idea was that the steel tubes remains after manufacturing as part of the FOD panel on the edges of the FOD panel. And so we had here some additional insertion bars on one end of the steel tube, which should be inserted into the edge areas of the preform. And actually, there in the further course of the project, they were banded for a positive form fit connection to the resin and to the FOD panel. And this was the way to implement the optical fibers into the RTM to realize the RTM process monitoring during the RTM process. And to the topic of RTM monitoring using FBG data, here's an overview slide about our way to do it. It has been confirmed that the arrival of the resin resulted in a decrease, or as you see here later on, a decrease or increase in the wavelength of each sensors. And a factor based on our experimental results was used to serve as a limit value for the wavelength shift in relation to a specific interval. So if the resin arrived and the FBG if each sensing point has this wavelength shift, we can say using this factor that the resin arrived there. And this figure shows the passage of the resin going through the FOD panel from the left to the right and passes all the FBGs in this array. And here's the associated FBG signal, which shows an increase or decrease of the signal. And using this FBG-based data is possible to have this RTM process monitoring. Here's the same, as previous shown wavelength shift, the same graph. and also the intensity shift for the same time. And next to this, most important data of the wavelength shift, the intensity gives some additional, provides some additional information such as vacuum effects or polarization effects, which can be used for better process monitoring ideas. And if you, I think Vladislav showed the same or same picture of this characterization or visualization of the RTM monitoring use this FBG data. You can see the arrival time at each sensing point, and this results more or less in a straight line, and so it could be used for characterize or visualize the process. And also a map of the whole FOD panel can be created on base of this FBG data, which shows the resin arrival at each sensing point. And using this color-coded heat map, it's possible to have an idea about the shape or the flow, resin flow through the whole FOD panel. And on the next slide, we used validation of the FBG data. So we used the conversion between the optical, the FBG, and the electrical, the optimal sensor data, which are from synthesized. And as you correlate the data in detail, you see a good correlation of the flow, the pattern, and also the arrival times. But there's an offset of this arrival time between the sensors, the sensor techniques. And this is the main reason for this is that the FBG sensors are positioned in the inside of the preform, while the electric sensors are on the outside of the mold, the inside of the mold, but on the surface side of the part. And so we have this kind of description of the offset which occurred there. And if you use both techniques for this resin flow, make it possible to investigate the flow behavior of the resin in the component cross section, and this provides an important process knowledge too. Okay, and to my last slide, as I mentioned, the FBG sensors for the RTM process monitoring have a good correlation of the resin flow between the optical and the electrical sensors. The major challenge was integrating the sensors in such a way that the fiber survives the compression phase of the RTM process and enable the further use of the FBGs for the SHM later on. And this simple photo on this final slide is it's required a considerable amount of research and also several iteration loops to finally succeed in manufacturing a fully functional optical fibers into this FOD panel, which survived the harsh RTM process environment. So I think we can be proud of this solved processes. And yes, this was the presentation. If you have questions, please use the Q&A board or ask later on. Thank you for your attention.